Okay, outside of maybe the first couple of weeks of the college football season, this has got to be the best week of the year, right? I mean, at the beginning of the season, everyone's excited because it's just been so long since we had any football games that the games themselves actually don't even matter in terms of who's playing who or if there are good games or top 10 matchups or whatever. It's just been so long since we've had football. We all just get so excited about the first couple of weeks. But outside of that, this has got to be the best week in all of college football, right? This is what college football is all about. Rivalries, tradition, playing another school from your same state. I mean, it's just so much of what we love about college football is wrapped up and tied into what goes on this week in the college football season. Plus, on top of that, it's the end of the season, the end of the regular season, so you've got division titles up for grabs. Who's going to be playing in conference championship games? Teams are trying to get bowl eligible. Even teams that have had bad seasons, disappointing seasons, have missed expectations, whatever, have a chance to somewhat redeem their season in a lot of cases this week with a win over a big in-state rival or division rival or whatever the case may be. If you can't get excited about this week of college football, then I just have to question how passionate you really are about college football. To me, this week just summarizes everything that we love about college football. In today's video, I'm going to give you a preview and a prediction against the spread for all the SEC games coming up in the last week of the regular season, week 14, rivalry week. Let's go. Hey, good morning. It's Uncle Lou here. Yeah, that's right. It's me, Uncle Lou, and I'm live for you on LouTube today. Thanks for watching, man. I sure do appreciate it also. And two, in addition to that as well, subscribe to this channel. If you're watching this video this late in the season, you're probably already subscribed. But if you happen to stumble across this video and you're not subscribed, hit the subscribe button. I post college football videos every single day. Not just during football season, but year round. Hit that subscribe button right now. Slap a thumbs up on this video if you're excited about rivalry week, which, like I said in the beginning, if you can't get excited about this week of college football, then you just can't get excited. Give this video a thumbs up. It doesn't cost you any money. Doesn't take you any time at all to do, but it's a huge help to me. Thumbs up in that. All right, here we go, rivalry week. Great games in the SEC this week. Across the board, up and down. We have 3 days of SEC games this week. Thursday games, Friday games, Saturday games. As usual, all the numbers that I use in today's video are going to come straight from the website over at betnow.eu. There's a link in the description of this video. If you click that link, it'll take you over to betnow.eu. You can make yourself some money betting on these college football games this weekend. This is the second year in a row I've been lucky enough to work with the good people over at betnow.eu, and they've given me a promo code to let you guys use again this season. When you get signed up over at betnow.eu, if you use the promo code Uncle Lou, that's one word, Uncle Lou, they're going to give you a bonus on whatever you deposit. Good luck. All right, Turkey Day, Thursday. Thanksgiving, right? Happy Thanksgiving to all you guys watching. By the way, I mentioned it in yesterday's video. I mentioned it again today. I mention it in every single video. I hope you guys have a great Thanksgiving. I'm thankful for all of you this year. This has been the best year yet for me here on LouTube, and really, it's not even close. It blowing last year out of the water. So I owe you guys so much, and thank you. All right, the SEC kicks things off rivalry week this season. Thanksgiving night, 7:30 over on ESPN with the Egg Bowl. Is there a more exciting name for a rivalry than the Egg Bowl? Yeah, there is. Literally any other name you could come up with would be more exciting than the Egg Bowl, but that's what they call this one. Ole Miss at Mississippi State. Two average to below average teams this year, really, in the SEC. Neither team really a threat to do anything this year, and that's the way it played out. Ole Miss, some excitement with John Rice Plumlee and a freshman quarterback they have that has wowed some people this year with his legs, of course, putting up over 200 yards on the ground against LSU a couple of weeks ago. He's done some things, maybe a reason to be optimistic for Ole Miss going forward. You look at Mississippi State, it's been a downhill spiral under Joe Moorhead. I said last year, his first year, I don't think Moorhead is the right fit for Mississippi State. I said I don't think he's going to be there very long. People jumped all over me. Now it's looking like maybe I was right. In fact, they may not fire him. He may choose to leave. It just doesn't seem to be a good fit there with Joe Moorhead. It's been a disappointment for 2 years, a disappointment again this year. They are the home team here, and there are 2.5-point favorite. The X factor, of course, is John Rice Plumlee. If he can get loose in this game, if he can go off in this game, I think he can keep Ole Miss in this game and potentially pull off the upset and a win. I think this is going to be a really good game. In fact, I'm going to call for the upset here. I'm going to take Ole Miss on the road to upset Mississippi State. Give me the Rebels and those points. All right, now if you wake up from your turkey hangover on Friday afternoon, you can watch Missouri go on the road to take on Arkansas, 2:30 over on CBS. Two teams that aren't very good, right? Arkansas, of course, the worst team in the SEC and one of the worst teams in all of the Power Five. Missouri, a very weird team and a very hard team to figure out the first 6-7 weeks of this season, right? They go out week 1, they lose on the road to Wyoming. People are scratching their heads because in the offseason, people thought, oh, you looked at their schedule and you say, this team could be 6-0, 7-0, 8-0 before a tough stretch of games at the end of the season with teams like Georgia, Florida, a schedule sort of backloaded. But they lose week 1 to Wyoming and people are scratching their head. Didn't they reel off 5 or 6 wins in a row? And now they've lost 5 or 6 games in a row, including a beatdown last week by the Tennessee Vols, which got the Vols bowl eligible, which is a huge deal. So this isn't a very exciting game. I don't even really consider this game a rivalry. I think the SEC is trying to force feed that to us, that this is somehow a rivalry game. I don't really buy it. Will I watch this game? Probably, because I'm just a college football junkie. Could this be Kelly Bryant's last ever college football game? Probably. Missouri's on a bowl ban. They've appealed it, but the NCAA not trying to get in a hurry to rule on any of these things unless you're Chase Young at Ohio State, in which case they make their ruling in like a day and a half. But don't get me started on that. The NCAA and the way they dole out punishments, how they handle appeals, how it takes a year to do one thing and 2 days to do another. No one knows. It's just completely ridiculous. But anyway, could be Kelly Bryant's last college football game. Of course, he transferred to Missouri from Clemson after last year losing a job to Trevor Lawrence. Goes to Missouri, trying to prove to NFL teams that he's good enough to be an NFL quarterback. Did he do a good enough job this year? I'm not sure. Somebody may take a shot on him late. In a late round. I'm really not sure. He missed some time with injury, and when he did play, he didn't look that great, to be honest. So we'll see what the NFL thinks of that going forward. But anyway, Missouri on the road at Arkansas. Missouri's a 12-point favorite in this one. I think Kelly Bryant goes out a winner. I think Missouri wins this game on the road at Arkansas. Arkansas is just terrible. I mean, they've already fired their head coach, Chad Morris, who was just an abject failure during his 2-year run at Arkansas. And Arkansas has just had no offense, and that's been the hard part to figure out because Chad Morris is an offensive guy going back to his days at Clemson, then head coach at SMU before getting a head job there at Arkansas. And it was just a total disappointment. Everything just looked discombobulated the entire time he was at Arkansas. I think he started 6 different quarterbacks in the year and a half he was a head coach at Arkansas before they fired him a couple of weeks ago. It's just been a huge disappointment. So he's out. Arkansas is in full head coach search mode. This isn't really a rivalry game like I meant. I don't think Arkansas considers Missouri a rivalry. I think it's going to be hard for Arkansas to get excited about this game. It's on a Friday. It's just a lot of things are weird here surrounding Arkansas. It's hard to pick them to win. I don't think anybody would pick them to win, would they? I wouldn't. In fact, I think Missouri probably rolls in this game. Give me the road team. I'm going to take Missouri, and you can lay those 12 points in that. All right, on to the Saturday games. Clemson at South Carolina, one of the most bitter rivals within the SEC in this rivalry week. And, of course, I know Clemson is an ACC team, but I just mean games involving SEC teams. Huge brawl in this game, about 10 years ago when Lou Holtz was there. Two teams that really don't like each other, right? A lot of these kids know each other. You see this all the time, kids from the same state, and then you have an in-state rivalry here. Clemson's a huge road favorite in this one. Are we going to see anything like we saw last year where, I mean, the game was never in doubt last year between Clemson and South Carolina, but Clemson was a huge favorite, and South Carolina came out and pretty much moved the ball at will against Clemson. It was kind of weird to see. They had, 500 yards passing or something like that last year against the Taters. I don't think we're going to see that this year. I really don't. There's rumblings in Columbia that Will Muschamp may be on the way out. I think that's a terrible idea for South Carolina to fire him, and I'm not trolling. This isn't one of those things where, I make a list of my 5 favorite coaches, and really it's just like coaches that are terrible, and I want their team to keep them forever so Georgia can keep beating up on them. That's not the case here with Will Muschamp. This is his 4th year. In his first 3 years there, he won more games than any other coach did in their first 3 years in South Carolina history. More than Lou Holtz, more than Steve Spurrier. Now, we could list a million reasons or excuses of why that is, but the point is, It is. I mean, he did. I think he earned a freebie for this year. When you look at South Carolina's schedule heading into this year, anybody with any sense said this team's going to struggle to make a bowl game. It was one of the toughest schedules in America. They had to play Georgia, they had to play Alabama, and they had to play Clemson. I mean, those are 3 top 5 teams, right? They also play Texas A&M. They also play Florida. Florida, top 10 team. Texas A&M is right now is a 4-loss team, but all 4 of those losses were the top 10 teams, so they're a pretty good team too. So the point is, South Carolina's schedule was just absolutely brutal. So I don't think they should have had much expectations at all heading into this year. Now, they beat Georgia. Will that be enough to save Will Muschamp's job? I'm not sure, because a couple of weeks after that, he turned around and lost to App State. The natives are getting restless in Columbia. About half the fan base is done with Will Muschamp already. We'll see what the administration does. Of course, a couple of weeks ago, they actually called down to Tallahassee to talk to Florida State about how they handled Willie Taggart's buyout, and that's when a lot of this "could Will Muschamp get fired" talk really started to sort of ramp up. I don't think they should fire him. Not very many people wanted the South Carolina job 4 years ago when they hired Will Muschamp. That's one of the reasons they hired Will Muschamp. Less people would want the job now, I think. It wouldn't make any sense to me to get rid of Will Muschamp. We'll see what they do, though. Do I think Will Muschamp is a great coach? No, I don't. But if you look at, like I said, what South Carolina did his first 3 years, then you look at the schedule heading into this season, there's not very many coaches, okay, that could have had a good season with that schedule with South Carolina's roster. There's not. How many games would Nick Saban had won this year with South Carolina's players in their roster? 6, 7 maybe. So the point is, it was never going to be a good year this year. I say you give Will Muschamp one more year. Next year, maybe the schedule's a little bit more favorable. It is a little bit more favorable next year. You don't have to play Alabama for starters. So give him another year, see what he does. I don't know what they're going to do. We'll see. If they get blown out in this game by 40 or 50 points, the percentage of Carolina fans who want Muschamp gone is going to increase exponentially. So we'll see what happens. I do think Clemson is going to roll in this game. I think Clemson's going to win big in Columbia, and that's another thing that could factor into the Will Muschamp decision-making at the end of the year. This is going to be a home crowd for South Carolina. If this is a 4 or 5 touchdown game in the second half and the stadium is emptying out, or the Boo Birds are out or whatever, that could be very bad news for Will Muschamp. We'll see. And I think that is likely to be the case. I think Clemson will roll in this game. I don't think this game will be close. I don't think you're going to see what you saw last year where South Carolina, even though they lose by 3 touchdowns last year, but put up a ton of yards and scored a ton of points. I don't think that's going to happen this year. I just don't. I think Clemson could win this game by 40 points. I really, really do. I'm going to take the Taters on the road here. You can lay all those points, and I don't think you have to worry. All right, Georgia at Georgia Tech, 12 o'clock on ABC. Uncle Lou will be going to this game. My first time going to a game at Georgia Tech, so I'm excited. I'm taking Lou Jr. up there. We were supposed to go to the Texas A&M game last week, which would have been amazing. SEC games are the best. I wish we could have gone, but I just wasn't going to go sit in the rain and watch that game, especially with Lou Jr. So I changed my mind, and we're going to the Georgia Tech game this weekend instead. My first trip to Bobby Dodd Stadium. Anyway, this game comes on 12 o'clock on ABC. Georgia's a 28-point road favorite in this one. And listen, no one on planet Earth has been harder on Georgia this year than me, okay? And it's because I have certain expectations for Georgia. And there hasn't been very many games this year where they've lived up to those expectations, mostly on the offensive side of the ball. It's no secret. I'm not going to get into a bash Georgia thing here or list everything that's wrong with Georgia. That's not the point here. Georgia Tech's not a good team. We have owned them this century, whether we've had great teams, average teams, or bad teams. We have owned them. I think they've beat us 3 times this century, okay? So we've owned them year in and year out. First year staff at Georgia Tech, brand new offense. Now, Georgia Tech is better today than they were way back in week 1 when we all watched them play Clemson on a Thursday night to kick the season off, the first ever game on the ACC network. They are a better team than that now. They're nowhere near Georgia. I think Georgia's offense is going to come out and explode in this game. Yes, I said it. Yes, I said it. Uncle Lou, the person who has been unfairly hard on Georgia's offense some of the time, and no one has been harder on them than me. I think Georgia is going to have a great game. I honestly believe that. I'm not trolling. This isn't me crossing my fingers and hoping and praying. And I think that is what needs to happen for Georgia heading into the SEC championship game the following week against LSU. Do I think Georgia's been hiding their offense or hiding their playbook? Some of these stupid-ass theories you hear people say. No. Georgia's offense is what it is, okay? It has looked off most of the year, Fromm included. 3 straight games, Fromm has completed less than 50% of his passes. That hasn't happened at Georgia in the last 20 years, so he has been off. I think they put it together this week. I think it's going to be a huge confidence boost for Georgia heading into that SEC championship game in Atlanta. I think it's a confidence boost that Georgia's offense desperately needs, and I think it's going to happen this week on the road in Atlanta. Georgia has not scored over 30 points against a Power 5 team since way back against Tennessee, about halfway through the season. And that's the only time all season that Georgia has scored over 30 points against a Power 5 team. That's right, Georgia has scored over 30 points against a Power 5 team once this entire season, and that was against Tennessee when we scored 43 points. We scored exactly 30 against Vanderbilt on the road way back in week 1. So Vandy, we scored 30. Tennessee, we scored 43. Every other Power 5 team we have played against, we have scored less than 30 points. That trend comes to a stop Saturday. Georgia's offense is going to go off in this game. I think they get into the 40s again, similar to how they did against Tennessee. Georgia Tech's going to struggle to score at all in this game. Georgia will win big. I'm going to take my team, the Georgia Bulldogs, on the road and lay the 28 points. Louisville at Kentucky. Kentucky's a home favorite here. 3 points, 12 o'clock, SEC Network. I think Kentucky wins this game. They've had a rough year. Louisville has surprised some people this year. They've been better, I think, than some people thought they would be. I mean, they had one of the worst seasons they've ever had last year, so expectations were pretty low heading into this season. I think they've exceeded those expectations. Kentucky is sort of the opposite. Kentucky, of course, had their first 10-win season in forever last year. A lot of hope heading into this season that even if they didn't get to 10 wins, they wouldn't take a nosedive, and they sort of have taken a nosedive, really. I don't think they have lived up to anyone's expectations this year. I think they've been worse than most people thought they would be. Even though they lost Snell and Allen off of that team last year, there was still reason to be optimistic, and they've just sort of missed. I think this is an opportunity. I talked at the beginning of the video about how some teams can sort of salvage their season with a win over their rival this week. I think Kentucky is a prime example of that. Will they be 100% happy with the way the season went if they beat Louisville? No, but they'll be a lot happier if they beat Louisville than they will if they don't. I think they get it done. Give me Kentucky, lay the points. Okay, and then maybe the most important game in the SEC this week in terms of postseason implications, the Iron Bowl. Alabama goes on the road to play Auburn, 3:30 on CBS. Tua is gone. We all know that. There's no sense really in even getting into it. Mac Jones gonna get the start here in the Iron Bowl against Auburn. Gus Malzahn's team has had offensive issues this year. Their defense has played pretty well most of the season, even going back to the LSU game. LSU's got one of the best offenses in America. They held LSU to 23 points. Auburn's defense has to have a performance similar to that in today's game if they want to have any chance to win, right? This will be the best team Mac Jones has ever played against. Period. There is no question. There is no doubt about that. Gus Malzahn is going to have to figure out a way to get his defense to make life uncomfortable for Mac Jones if Auburn has any chance to win this game. It's a home game for Auburn. We've seen Auburn win some big home games as underdogs in the past, most notably 2017 when they beat Georgia and Alabama to end the season. They came up short against Georgia this year, losing by a touchdown. Can they make up for that with a big win over in-state rival Alabama? Auburn has a chance to completely ruin Alabama's season. And that's not something they have a legitimate chance to do very often, but they have a legitimate chance to do it this season. There are some people who think Alabama still has a really good chance to get into the playoffs. I don't know if I would call it a really good chance, but I think they do have a chance, depending on what happens in the Big 12 and the Pac-12. But if they don't win this game, it doesn't matter what happens in the Big 12 or the Pac-12. They won't get in. There is no way a 10-2 Alabama team gets in that doesn't even win its division. It's possible they could sneak in like they did in 17. If they go 11-1 again, they're going to have to beat Auburn to do that. Can they do it? No. I'm taking the barn here. I think Auburn pulls the upset here. I don't trust Mac Jones. People keep telling me he's great. Maybe he is. If he is, he can go out and prove it. Now, Alabama's still loaded at the wide receiver position, and it's not like you have to make perfect passes to get people like Jerry Jeudy and Waddle and Devontae Smith and all these people to make catches. But I'm going to say the pressure gets to Mac Jones in this game. I think Auburn's defense plays really well in this game, and I think Gus Malzahn's offense figures out a way and does just enough to get a close win in this game. I'm going to take the barn, and I'm going to take the 3.5 points too. Maybe this ends up being a close game. If it comes down to a field goal game, you already know Alabama loses. They can't make extra points, much less field goal. But anyway, I'm going to take the barn here and those 3.5 points. Upset alert. Vandy on the road at Tennessee, and Tennessee's one of the hottest teams. I mean, have they beat any great teams? No, but listen, if you're Tennessee, you'll take wins over anybody you can get in. You string together 3, 4, 5 wins in a row at Tennessee, you're doing something. They host Vanderbilt this week. And listen, most people in the college football world aren't going to consider this to be a huge game. And I agree. There's no postseason implications or division races up for grabs or anything like that. And traditionally, Tennessee is just a way better program than Vandy. We all know that. But Vandy has dominated Tennessee over the last 5, 6, or 7 years. They've won, I think, 3 in a row. I think they've won 5 out of the last 7 against Tennessee. Vandy's having a really bad year. Tennessee started off really bad, but they do look better now than they did in the beginning of the season. Of course, they lost to Georgia State and BYU in the first month of the season, and everyone just completely wrote them off. They've strung together 3 or 4 SEC wins in a row, and for Tennessee, that is a big deal. I'm not trolling. They've already became bowl eligible to win last week. I've been saying for a couple of weeks, if they beat Missouri and get bowl eligible, I think they blow Vandy out by 40 points. And my thinking was, you got to beat Missouri. If you lose to Missouri and you go into the Vandy game sitting on 5 wins, the pressure of having to win that game to become bowl eligible and in-state rival, and Vandy's beat you 3 in a row, there was the potential there for that to get to Tennessee. If they lost to Missouri, the confidence that they had going would have come to a screeching halt, and I would have been a little concerned about this game. That's one extreme, right? The fact that they beat Missouri puts me on the other extreme. I think Tennessee is an extremely confident football team right now. Again, do I think Tennessee is a great team? No, and that's not what I'm saying, okay? But there are levels of good, average, and bad, right? And in the first month of the season, it didn't get much lower than where Tennessee was at now. If you look at the, if you want to say there's 20 teams that are really good and there's 20 teams that are really bad, and then you got 90 teams in the middle, Tennessee is in the middle of those 90 teams. And I believe at home, they are going to absolutely destroy Vanderbilt. I don't think they're going to let up. I don't think they're going to take their foot off the gas. Tennessee is looking for confidence, almost more so than they're looking for wins. Now, wins are great. They win here, they'll finish 7-5. They'll make a bowl game with an opportunity to go 8-5. Hard to predict that until we figure out who they're playing in the bowl game. I think they win huge in this game. I've been saying for a couple of weeks now, they're going to beat Vandy by 40. I'm going to stick with that. There's a 22-point spread. I think Tennessee wins this game by 40. Give me the home team. Give me the Vols. Lay to 22. Texas A&M at LSU. Is there potential for an upset here? Yeah, I think there's potential. Is it going to happen? Probably not. Joe Burrow is on fire. He's going to win the Heisman. He's going to win the Maxwell Award. He's going to win the Davy Bryant Award, in my opinion. He's going to win all 3. Clean sweep. He's completing 80% of his passes, over 4,000 yards, a ton of touchdowns, hardly any turnovers. Texas A&M, it is real hard to figure out how good of a team Texas A&M is, right? They've lost 4 games, but who have they lost to? Georgia, Alabama, Clemson, and Auburn. That's 4 top 15 teams. Georgia and LSU, that's 2 top 4 teams. Georgia, LSU, and Alabama, that's 3 top 5. They've lost to 3 of the top 5 teams in America, and they lost to Auburn, a top 15 team. So it's hard to figure out, is Texas A&M I'll tell you this. Texas A&M is nowhere near as bad as your average 4-loss team. They're not. There ain't very many teams in America that could beat those 4 teams that Texas A&M has lost to. So it's no shame that Texas A&M has lost 4 games. Now, I'm not here to try to pump Texas A&M up. If you want to be a good team, you got to beat good teams. So I'm not trying to tell you that they're great or anything, but I think the potential exists to make this a pretty good game. It obviously helps LSU that it's at home, it's at night, and LSU has a lot of extra motivation. Not that they need it, but they have a lot of extra motivation from what happened in last year's game against Texas A&M. That was the 6 or 7 overtime game, and there was some controversial calls by the referees in that game. LSU fans are still talking about that. There's speculation, and this is probably true, that LSU could lose the SEC championship game and still get into the college football playoff. That's probably true. If Georgia beats LSU in Atlanta, LSU would probably fall to 4, would be my guess. Unless they lose this game. If they lose this game, then the SEC championship game becomes must-win for LSU, right? A 2-loss team that loses the SEC title game would not get in. So this is a must-win game, I think, for LSU. They don't want that pressure of having to win, I don't think, heading into the SEC championship. They'd rather take care of business here. I think they will. I also think that Texas A&M can keep this game close. I'm going to take the road team here, Texas A&M, to keep this closer than 17. LSU's defense is still suspect to me. I think Kellen Mond will make enough plays, both with his arms and his legs, to keep this maybe a 2-score game, 14-ish type points. Maybe this ends up being something like the LSU-Florida game, right? LSU, it seemed like, was always 2 touchdowns up on Florida. Florida would score to make it a 1-possession game. LSU would go right back down the field and score again to make it a 2-possession game. Maybe you end up seeing something similar to that here in the second half between Texas A&M and LSU. But I do expect the Corn Dogger to win this game. But for betting purposes, I'm going to take Texas A&M and the 17 points. All right, and then FSU at Florida. And FSU is another example of a team that's had a terrible year. They fired their coach, Willie Taggart. Addition by subtraction there, by the way. Willie Taggart was terrible. He had no business getting that job to start with. He didn't know what he was doing. He was in over his head. And on top of all that, in addition to everything else that I've already said, he's not a very good head coach, okay? But Florida State can, well, I don't know if Florida State can salvage its season, but Florida State can sure improve their self-esteem with a win over Florida to close out the regular season here. Florida's a 17.5-point home favorite in this one, 7:30 on the SEC network. Florida's sitting at 9-2 with losses to LSU and Georgia, right? Lost to Georgia by 1 score, lost to LSU by 2 scores. Had a good win over Auburn. They beat Miami, of course, to start the season. Can they keep it going here at home in this rivalry game against Florida State? Florida State championship, that's what Florida's looking to do, a clean sweep. They would beat Florida State and Miami. FSU would love nothing more than to go into the swamp and beat Florida. I just don't see it happening. I do think Florida State is a better team today than they were the day before they fired Willie Taggart. I think getting rid of him was the best thing that Florida State could have done. And if you've watched Florida State play the last couple of weeks since they fired Willie Taggart, you would agree with me. They're a better team without him, okay? Addition by subtraction. It's not going to be enough to beat Florida, I don't think. Now, 17.5 is an interesting number to me because I could see this being like a 34-17 type of game, which would be 17. 17.5 is interesting. I would keep an eye on this line if I wanted to bet it. I'm probably going to stay away from this because it's 17.5. If it goes under 17, I'm probably going to lean Florida. Well, put it this way. If there's a blowout, it would be in Florida's direction. But I just have a feeling, and I know Florida State's not good, and I get it. I just have a feeling this is going to be like a 34-17 type of game. Not a close game, but I think this spread is dead on the money here, and that scares me in terms of betting. For the purposes of the video, I'm going to take Florida and lay to 17.5, but I would not actually bet Florida at 17.5. I would wait and see. If it comes under 17, I would, but this is probably a stay-away game for me, but you guys get mad if I don't pick an exact winner and loser against the spread here. So give me the Gators, lay to 17.5 and that. All right, that's it. Rivalry week in the SEC. Some great games, right? And some games with some serious postseason and playoff implications here. So we'll see how this all plays out. I can't wait. The games start on Thursday and run all the way through Saturday. I'm going to try to do a second preview video this week. This week is kind of condensed, obviously, with Thanksgiving being on Thursday and the games starting so much earlier in the week than they normally do. So I'm going to try to get to a second preview and prediction video where I do the non-SEC games, and there's some good ones. Virginia Tech and Virginia. The winner of that game wins the division. Cincinnati at Memphis. Both of those are one-loss teams. The winner of that game is probably going to be the highest-ranked Group of 5 team. That's worth watching. Ohio State at Michigan, right? You have to watch that game every year no matter what. This year, huge implications. Ohio State's undefeated. They're looking to stay that way. Michigan wants to try to ruin their season. They've been on a roll. Looks just like last year. Will the result be the same? I don't know. Wisconsin at Minnesota, right? Division on the line there. Ohio State's going to play the winner of that game in the Big Ten title game. OU and Oklahoma State. I think OU needs a huge win to try to impress the playoff committee. If they've got any chance of sneaking into that 4 spot, we'll see. Miami at Duke. Who's better, Duke or FIU? No. Have a good morning.